Hey, it's Cindy, and I wanted to suggest this podcast I recently discovered called American Songcatcher with Nicholas Edward Williams. It's an independent audio documentary-style podcast hosted by the folk musician and music history enthusiast. I'm very surprised to find out that Nicholas doesn't have like a journalistic background, because the way that he delivers this podcast and these stories is truly profound, and it just sucks you right in. Each episode has 5 stories, starting with one traditional song's journey to America, followed by the stories of 4 musicians and American roots, starting with the legends of the past, going all the way to current artists of the day. You'll hear the stories behind the songs of immigrants from the British Isles and Europe who brought their tunes into the Appalachian Mountains, to songs of the South, gospel, bluegrass, ragtime, blues, old-time country, and the folk music derived from it all. You can find American Songcatcher wherever you get your podcasts. Bye. Hi, and welcome to Basic Folk, where we have honest conversations with folk musicians. I am your host, Cindy Howes. It is so wonderful to have you here today. And before we get into Aoife O'Donovan, got a couple of things to talk about. Number 1, if you would like to support the podcast, you can do so by going to our website, basicfolk.com. You can make a contribution and financially support this independent podcast. We are listener supported. If you're already doing so, thank you so much. Another thing you can do while you're at the website is sign up for our newsletter. You can also follow us on social media. We're at Basic Folk Pod. You can find everything at our website, basicfolk.com. Okay, today's a big day. It's our 150th episode of Basic Folk. Woo! Okay. For our 150th episode, we are so pleased to welcome Aoife O'Donovan to the pod. Aoife's new album, Age of Apathy, just came out. This is her 3rd solo record after years of performing with her bands I'm With Her, along with Sarah Watkins and Sarah Jarosz, Crooked Still, Sometimes Why with Kristen Andreasen and Ruth Miranda, and The Wayfaring Strangers. She was born and raised in Newton, Massachusetts, and her dad, radio host and music champion Brian O'Donovan, moved to the U.S. in 1980 from Ireland. Thanks to her music-loving parents, she and her siblings grew up in the Irish music party world in Boston. Aoife spent summers in Ireland and is very closely associated with the music, culture, and people there. The impact her heritage and the early environment of her life have had on her musicality cannot be understated. The role that Aoife has played in the folk and roots world has grown significantly over the years. From her appearances on Prairie Home Companion and Chris Thile's Live From Here program, to her many appearances at Newport Folk Festival, she is a household name in many folk-oriented communities. On her latest album, she works with Joe Henry to incite a hypnotic groove throughout her beautifully written songs. There is so much to listen to and discover on this album. Aoife's been living in Orlando, Florida, where her husband is the artistic director and conductor for a few symphonies. She's actually turned into like the city's #1 ambassador, and she talks about this and entertains my cosmically woo-woo questions about feminism, energy, and alcohol. Thanks so much to Aoife O'Donovan for appearing on our 150th episode of Basic Folk. We're going to take a listen to a song from her latest album. Here's Phoenix, and then we'll get to our conversation with Aoife O'Donovan on the 150th episode of Basic Folk.
Time's not the villain coming up behind you. It's marigold sun, love if you will, and take a little more time. I smell fire, it's coming from the flames that are dancing on my wings. I'm a bird on a wire, killing time. Feelings got me shaking, rises up like a road to make me feel. It's got me quaking like centuries fall. Just put a cloth to my brow. I soar like a phoenix from the ashes, painted like a town. I'm ready now.
Aoife, this is so exciting. I'm so happy to talk to you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Cindy, for having me on this podcast.
I've got a lot of questions for you. So we're going to cover every single aspect and detail of your life.
Oh, every single aspect and detail of my life. Okay, let me buckle my seatbelt.
Yep. You were born and raised in Newton, Massachusetts. Your dad, Brian O'Donovan, moved to the U.S. in 1980 and ended up staying there. You spent summers in Ireland and are very closely associated with the music, culture, and people there. And there's kind of like this exotic mysticism about Ireland, and often people equate that mystic to your songs, like myself included. But how do you feel about that? And do you see that like Irish enchantment influencing your music?
I think that I do see that association between the mysticism of Ireland and my music and myself, my deep inner self. I think that growing up in Boston and kind of having this thing that we did every summer, we would go to Ireland every summer and visit my dad's family. And my dad is a great storyteller. I just, a lot of this stuff I kind of dealt with on my last record in the Magic Hour, just kind of going back and sort of the Turf Cutter's Donkey, these old Irish books, these storybooks of my childhood, and just the fairy forts, the ghost stories, the scenery, the imagery, the landscape. All of that is just so much a part of me, of who I am. And I'm sort of seeing that now kind of being passed on subliminally to my child. So yeah, it's definitely there.
You were growing up in the Irish music party world in Boston, and I would assume that extended over to your summers in Ireland. Can you set the scene for what that looked like as a kid, and also what lessons from your childhood do you now apply to your role as a parent?
Let's see. Those are kind of two questions that definitely relate. Setting the scene. I mean, my parents are both musicians, and although they met kind of through the music. They met at a music party, which is hilarious because that's exactly how I met my husband, also at a party where people were playing music. And they are very social people, and they have kind of been stalwarts of the music scene, really, not just the Irish music scene in Boston, but really sort of, they're mainstays in that community in Boston and have been for my entire life. And that kind of started as a child, and they would host touring Irish bands at their house when we lived in Newton. Also, my parents lived in Dedham for a brief time, and I remember the parties in that tiny house on Hillside Road. But yeah, great parties, great, and just sort of a love of, conviviality and just sharing music, sharing food, and sharing community. And that's definitely, that is definitely something that I'm trying to give to my daughter, although that's, it's been a crazy, half of her life has been essentially in the pandemic. So we've been really lucky that we have been able to still have a lot of community, here in Florida, because we've been able to be outside, and it's just been so lucky that you can do stuff outside here that's safe. And she hasn't yet had the experience of falling asleep to banjos and fiddle tunes, just because we haven't really, we haven't had a party in 2 years.
Yeah, it all sounds like positive experiences from your childhood that you're applying to your family now.
Definitely.
Yeah, great. You have said that you are obsessed with your family, and
where did I say that?
Oh, I think it was a long time ago when you were still living in Massachusetts.
I am.
Does that ring true?
It totally does. I'm just did I say that in print somewhere? I love my family so much. I feel I think I'm more conscious as I get older that when I say that, it's maybe shocking to some people, because I know that I'm very lucky that I have this relationship with my family, and I feel that we all work really hard at maintaining close relationships. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and my parents, I feel like we all put in a lot of effort to be close and to remain close. And I've seen that modeled by both of my parents, who are very close with their siblings. My dad has 8 siblings. He's one of 9 kids, and they have a weekly phone call. They're just, they really are all in very close touch. And my mom has only 1 brother, but, they're very close. And I'm really close to all of my extended family as well. Which again, is a rarity for sure. And the older I get, the more I realize how special it is.
Also, your parents got engaged after 3 days.
They did, yeah. You'll have to.
How did that happen?
You'll have to ask them. I can't. That's their story.
Good answer. Your parents are extremely into music, like you were talking about. Your mom, Lindsay, is a great musician, and your dad also plays, but he's known for being like a great musical connector with his radio show. How did their reverence and appreciation for music impact the way not only like you listened to music, but also the type of musician that you wanted to be?
I think that they were just so influential on me, first and foremost, by just exposing me and encouraging me. Exposing me to so much music, to so many different styles of music, and also just really encouraging my musical interest without really pushing it. I don't feel like, I mean, for better or for worse, I think that, being married to somebody who comes from the classical tradition, I think that there is an element of not regret that I have, but I'm sort of like, oh, why didn't I push myself harder as a child, to be better at the piano or, why don't I play violin or I don't know, those kinds of things. But that being said, I feel that they just turned me on to so much music and continue to. I mean, my dad is kind of, we're always kind of throwing stuff back and forth. My mom, still, this is hilarious, she discovers probably more music than all of us because she's just listening to the radio all the time. She's listening to WERS or UMB literally every single day. And she'll call me and be like, I just heard Tedeschi Trucks. And she's like, no, I'm just listening to Tedeschi Trucks, Spotify on repeat all day. And I'm like, that's just not what I would have expected my mom to say. The next day it'll be Anna Eggy or Rose Cousins or Watch House. Or, I mean, I just feel like she has this, she loves folk music and she loves kind of all of the elements of that too.
I love that. Your mom's up to date on Watch House's name change from Mandolin Orange
totally.
to Watch House.
She really is. She's like, she's like, oh, did you hear this person has a new record? Or I just heard this thing on, like, she's just I think we forget when we aren't in our cars all the time or we're not. I feel like there's a generation of people who really do listen to the radio all the time. I mean, Cindy, you know this because this is your world, but like, I forget that's a thing. That's a place where people discover music, and I'm so grateful for it, for all the spins.
Well, it's interesting, like, people of our generation, Eva, you and I are basically the same age, like, people who are our age and enjoy musical discovery, like, don't find the radio as a place for musical discovery because it's sort of just been, I don't know, that's just the way that the industry formed itself.
Right.
It's like less about musical discovery and more about, like, playing songs between commercials.
Right, and also I feel like we want everything to be so curated, whereas, like if you the way that like radio comes on after Spotify, if you're listening to an album, it'll kind of play stuff based on stuff it thinks you like, but the radio doesn't have an idea of what it thinks you like, and that's really, I feel like that's when you discover the coolest stuff, is when, it's not necessarily the stuff that somebody thought you would like.
One of your favorite parts of being a musician is collaborating with others, and I would imagine that seed was like first planted in your youth when you see your family like connecting through music. Could you talk about your experience with like jamming and collaborating with other musicians, and like what does it feel like for you? When did you first discover that feeling for yourself? Yeah,
I mean, I think that as a singer, kind of first and foremost, that has been a part of my musical sense of identity since the very beginning, just singing harmony and collaborating by singing harmony and collaborating, seeing my parents do it with their friends around the piano, my mom playing the piano and them singing like madrigals or McGarrigle's songs or, Bob Dylan and Joan Baez or just that kind of stuff around the piano and like 3-4 part harmony and rounds and all that kind of stuff. And I think that then, applying that to my life as a musician when I started Crooked Still and really coming up in a band, I think was just so formative. And I think now that I am a solo artist as well as a band member, there are different things in that. Like when you're in a band, it's just like it's all about the collaboration. It's all about each member kind of bringing their own kind of goods to the table, and you make something out of that.
What does that like feel like for you? Like inside, like does it feel like like you're at home, like that you belong, that like, I don't know. I really love the woo-woo, like the universe is inside of you, or something like that.
Yeah, I guess that's not really like how I think about it. I just love making music with people, but I feel like there's, I don't know. I mean, yes, you can have those moments, but you can also have those moments. There's also like a sense of collaboration between when you're on stage by yourself, you and the audience. You know what I mean? Like it can be anything. I feel like just making music in general is like such a sacred thing. And then when you have these special moments, when you're collaborating with somebody or when you're making music with somebody, I feel like collaboration is just sort of has become that kind of like a catchphrase, but it really is always like that's what music is. It's like a collaboration between the musician and whatever elements are at their fingertips at that time. Like I don't think it necessarily has to be. I don't know. It's not like a thing.
When you're on stage, like it's interesting to think of like if you're solo, like it's a collaboration between you and the audience, and then it's also interesting to think about like collaborating with like different sides of yourself and also getting that feeling, drawing like a through line to your different selves.
Yeah, I think it's like, even if it's just you're singing and playing an instrument, but it's also just like it's whatever is happening in the world at that moment also will sort of make the performance different or make the experience different. And that's what's so special about live music. Otherwise you would just like watch a YouTube video and it would be the same, or listen to a recording. You know what I mean? Like, but that's why you go and play concerts every night, is because it's different than it was the night before. Like, you're whether or not you're in a band or by yourself or a member of something or leading something, there's always something new to be gleaned.
So people talk about the jam and the hang at the jam. Are you familiar with that concept? The jam and then the hang at the jam? Just like the hanging around aspect, the hang at the concert or the festival, just like basically hanging out with people. So the last time we saw each other was at the Fresh Grass Festival in September, and we were like stage side. Sarah Jarosz was playing, and this was the hang that was going on. It was pretty epic. It was yourself, Noam Pikelny, Watch House, Sean and Sarah Watkins, and there were also some other musicians there.
Watch House was not there that day.
They were there.
No, they weren't. They didn't get there till the next day.
I love that you know that.
I know that because they're very good friends of mine, and I was texting with her, and I didn't see they were getting there on Sunday, and we had already left.
Okay, so they weren't there, but there were other musicians who I didn't recognize, but if you told me their names, I would know them. So that, like, what do you get from, like, being around that type of energy at a festival when, like, the hang is as epic as, like, the jam? Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, like, you're bringing back, because you mentioned Watch House, it was a similar vibe at Telluride where Watch House was there. And after their set, there was this incredible hang backstage in their dressing room. And it was just so special just to have just watched them play. And it was similar to Fresh Grass, just to get to see Jarosz on stage and also see Sarah Watkins, who I've only seen once in the last year and a half, who's one of my greatest friends of all time. Noam, who I've barely seen. Steep Canyon Ragers were all there. That was maybe like that was the other band that I remember seeing backstage that day at Fresh Grass. They're like just this really, really special just energy of coming up as a part of a community, and you've sort of known these people, whether or not you've known them for 15 years or if they're a new band and you're just meeting them. There's something really special about knowing that you're kind of all in it together, especially kind of post-pandemic or whatever, at this stage of the pandemic where everybody's kind of had a similar experience over the past couple of years. So we've known each other for a long time. So we met in 2003, like when we were like little tiny baby children. We were both in our early 20s, and I remember you being like the most energetic, hilarious, and fun person, as I myself was also like very amped up at the time. Like we've all settled down since then, but you still have this like incredible energy. Like you're a fast talker and you're still like so quick and so funny in conversation. Where do you think that energy came from? How have you learned to use it to your advantage, maybe especially in your music? Where does it get you into trouble? Oh, wow. Really interesting question. Well, I think that I am who I am, right? This is like, I'm almost 39. As I've gotten older, I think I'm more just aware of the fact that when I looking back on my early 20s or even my teenage years, like I'm just still me. I'm still the exact same person. And that's been really interesting to sort of watch my daughter, who's almost 4, even in her short life, she was the exact same personality when she was 6 months old and she could crawl. Like, she just had the same personality as she does now at age 4. And I know that she'll have the same personality when she's 40, because this just feels like this is just how it is, right? This like we just are who we are. I feel like as in the last decade, sort of since I've kind of become a little bit more focused on
making music a sustainable career. I feel like in my 20s with Crooked Still and Sometimes Why and Sub Rosa and kind of like the scene in the Lizard Lounge, it was a lot more for me. Like there was less at stake. You know, I was just like really into the hang and partying and like playing music and just kind of getting fulfilled by all of that. And I was writing, but not as much as I could or should have been. And I feel like as I've gotten older, I've kind of tried to harness my energy, as you say, into something more productive, and tried to like kind of create more music and create more, think bigger, think about projects that I want to do, and try to bring them to fruition. And I feel like that's, I don't know, it's easy to think about music as like, all right, you just go and play the tour and then you come home and you get ready for the next tour. But there's so much stuff I want to do and so much music I want to make, and trying to make time and space for it. And also then like find things to give me creative energy as well. I think like making time for running, like I get a ton of like energy out and in from like running outside. I just like, people always ask me if I listen to music when I run, and I don't. I just like run and think and try to like come up with song ideas and ideas about the world. But also I'm trying to like get energy out, because yes, I do have a lot of energy in general. And I want to put that to something, you know. I want to like think about the next thing. Like just now on my run, went for like a 5-mile run around all these lakes, and I'm going to the studio tomorrow, and I'm, you know, working on just more new music. And I'm just sort of thinking about, okay, how do I want to spend these 4 hours at the studio tomorrow? And what little ideas can I take, and can I go from that I'm going to get in this 45 minutes of time, you know?
When you run, what is your pace per mile?
Oh, I mean, like, not like, I mean, 8 or 9 minutes, like probably 8.5 minutes. I mean, jogging.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm like a 14-minute mile. Maybe I'm that's a joke. I'm like a 12-minute mile. I can't run very fast, but I can run for a long time. Okay, so another thing we were talking about, we talked for like a minute at Fresh Grass about drinking. Like I stopped in July for a dry month and have just like kept going. And again, like we're about the same age, and I wonder if this is like something that's like on people who are about to become middle-aged, like if it's on everyone's mind.
Wait,
but
are you
I'd love to hear
39
more.
or are you 38 or 37?
I'm 39.
Okay. You're also 82, right? We're the exact same year?
82.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah. But I'd love to hear more about your experience and relationship to like drinking, like how it's evolved, how you're feeling about it now, like what alcohol was like growing up around you.
Yeah, I feel like I have like a pretty, I don't have an addictive personality per se. Like I love to drink alcohol like casually. I really enjoy a nice hoppy beer or a cocktail. I wouldn't say like, in my 30s, I'm not like a big drinker, but I do enjoy alcohol, and therefore like I don't see it as, because I don't overdo it, so therefore I don't really see many negatives from it. I have noticed though that during the pandemic, like I just got into more like habitual drinking, which I don't think being on tour, like it's easy to not drink at all. If I'm on a solo tour, or if I'm on a tour where I'm doing merch and I'm driving, like I just don't really drink. I might have like half a beer when I get to the hotel before bed, if that, just sort of to like try to signify the end of the night. But that's kind of like my touring experience, or even like on I'm With Her tours, you know, I don't drink ever before shows. Like I'm a drink at the end of the night kind of person. Whereas in my 20s, it's not that way. Like I mean, but now I just feel like I just take it more seriously. Like I take what I'm doing more seriously. So on the road, you know, if I don't have to drive after a gig or settle up merch or do anything like that, I will enjoy like cracking a beer in the green room. But there's not like time for the long epic thing. And also like I get up early and I want to go for a run. And but that being said,
Right.
like I enjoy drinking. I enjoy drinking coffee. I feel like the same way about coffee and alcohol, which is that when I was pregnant, like it was very easy to not do either. And if I go for a week, like I've done multiple times in the pandemic, like not just taking a week off from drinking or taking a week off from, that's lie. I've never taken a week off from coffee. That would be harder for me. But drinking, yeah, I just like to make it special now. It's like at the end of the night, after a show, celebrate. Like on the weekend, I love, if I'm home and nobody else is home with me, like I don't really drink during the week. But then if I meet up with somebody on a Friday night, I really enjoy like a nice hoppy IPA or a cocktail.
Yeah.
That's my relationship with it.
It's nice to hear, like, it sounds like a good relationship. Like, I listened to this audiobook called Quit Like a Woman, and this lady like hates alcohol and thinks nobody should drink it ever and that it's poison and that.
But why? Like why? I just feel like anything. For me, it's like everything in moderation. That's like, and I feel like that's kind of how I want like my child to be. It's like last night was Halloween. Like, why should she not have a couple pieces of candy? Like, she never eats candy.
Right.
Or even like with TV,
Right.
she doesn't ever watch TV. But like on the weekends, if she watches one movie every weekend, and sometimes she doesn't even watch it because she don't have time or doing something else. But it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like she has a very healthy association with like the screen or the, I don't know. I don't want, it's like nothing is poison except for poison. Like what makes alcohol worse than
Right.
anything else?
Well, it sounds like you have like a very good definition and relationship of moderation.
Yeah, but doesn't everybody? Isn't that what moderation means?
Yeah, but some people like don't, you know. It's like there's like, I guess like saying like your opening to the answer was that you don't have an addictive personality, which I think is key.
Yeah, I guess. It's my siblings have this joke with me where they like at the holidays, I like to keep everybody to a 2-drink min-max. I call it a minimum maximum, which is that if we're like out for the night, if you have less than 2 drinks, like you're not partying. But if you have more, then you're cut off. It's like
that.
yeah. So that, I guess that's kind of how I think of it. How has it been for you? Like, will you go back to it, or do you think it's poison
I don't
for
know.
you?
No. Well, I mean, I think it's definitely feels like it feels. If I had a drink like tonight, I would feel it tomorrow. You know, and I think it's just a really good idea for me to just like keep on taking a break.
Oh yeah.
But at this point, I'm still thinking in terms of like, oh, I'll probably go back to it at some point. But in the meantime, you know, I'm like getting in touch with my feelings and really feeling everything, like for better or worse.
Right.
You know, it took like 2 months for that kind of like to hit me that like alcohol is really like dulling my senses. And not that like I'm a crazy drinker or anything, but I think the pandemic definitely amped it up.
Were you a wine drinker or like a spirits drinker or?
Wine.
Because I feel like wine, like because I'm just not really a wine drinker, I think that if I were a wine drinker, it would be, I just feel like it's harder to like only have, because it's like not measured, you're like pouring it out of a bottle into a glass. I don't know, it's like, it's so easy to like have a can of beer and be like, this is my treat. It's like having like a cookie or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you open it,
Yeah.
you drink it, and then you put it in the recycling and you're like, done. I don't know, I think
Done.
wine is like, just feels more like gray area or something.
Danger Island.
Yeah.
We call that Danger Island.
Yeah, it's. I don't mean to sound self-righteous or in any way, and I know that for some people, it is totally poison. I think that for me, this is also sort of like how I feel about food or anything. Just like I don't know. I don't really like to have like really strict rules for myself about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Anything other than like I love to exercise every day because I feel like that's really good for me. If I don't, then I'm like, okay, that was a bummer, but it's not that big of a deal.
So I want to talk about your singing. So you, for a long time, mainly consider yourself a singer, although now I hear that you will call yourself a guitar player as well, and you do play the piano. But it's like always been about your voice. Like you went to school for that. It's your craft. It's your instrument. What has been your journey with singing? Like when did you realize your voice was special? How have you cared for it? Do you ever not like it?
Okay, well, do I ever not like it? I'll start there. I mean, there are times where I wish I could do more things with it, but it's like it's just kind of back to what we were just talking about. It's like, to me, it's counterproductive to like not like something that you can't change. Like it's just, there's just no point in wasting your time thinking about that. So
You're so practical. I love it.
I mean, like I just don't have time to think about that kind of stuff. How do I care for it? I mean, my voice, I always knew that I wanted to be a singer. Like really, if you look at, my journal, my Kirsten American Girl Dolls journal, like I had that, whatever. You remember Kirsten and Samantha and Molly?
Oh, yeah, with the braids.
Yeah, Kirsten had the little
like
braids.
Princess Leia braids.
Exactly.
Swedish immigrant.
Totally. I had a little journal and I wrote in it, it says, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I'm Aoife, I'm 6 years old and I want to be a doctor or a singer. And I was never going to be a doctor, so that was not realistic for me. In elementary school, I remember auditioning for All City Chorus in Newton, Mass, and I didn't get in, but I didn't let that get me down. I kept on singing, and was involved in choirs and plays and everything in middle school and high school. And
So as like a young kid, you were like, I really like my voice. I'm going to keep going.
it wasn't like I don't even know if like I liked my voice. I mean, when I listen back to even recordings of myself from like 5 years ago, I don't like my voice. Like, I just think it's getting better. Like, I don't remember, gosh, if I heard a recording of myself singing from high school, I would cringe because it's just, I just can see all the
Same.
things I'm doing wrong. And yeah, it's just not.
But still, like at that point, you were like, I like to do this. It makes me feel good. I'm good at it.
Yeah, I think I felt like I was good. I think I felt like I had a good ear. I feel like that's something that I've always been confident in, is my ability to hear music in a certain way and find a harmony and sing harmony. Like those are the kind of things that always came really easily to me. And I think that's because I had that, it was sort of easier to go down the path of like towards becoming a professional musician.
Did you talk about how you care
How
for
I
your
care for it.
voice?
Well, that kind of ties back into the previous conversation of like, how I lived in my 20s versus my 30s. I feel like in my 20s, I would get hoarse a lot more often. And I can just see a direct correlation to like drinking too much or partying too much or not sleeping enough or going out after shows and talking too loud. And that just doesn't really happen to me at all anymore. It's not something that I worry about too much because I'm just not like I just would never go to a loud bar in the middle of a tour. Having nothing to do with COVID or drinking. I just would never go talk loud if I had a show the next day. I just like wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was younger, I would do that.
Your phrasing has always been like so cool and super interesting. You do this thing sometimes where you like sing really fast, monotone, and then you get a bunch of words in. Like Lucky Star on the new album is a good example of that, which is actually pretty vocally insane, that song. But can you speak to your phrasing, like what influences your unconventional approach?
Yeah, I think that what influences it, I'm not quite sure how to pinpoint exactly what influences it. I mean, there's so many singers that are such great phrasers, but also instrumentalists. I feel like a lot of my phrasing ideas kind of came from studying like at NEC and kind of being exposed to saxophone players and I don't know, just like how to even like Getz Gilberto, like that great album with Stan Getz and Joao Gilberto, that has Girl from Ipanema on it. Like the way that he would sing them, Joao Gilberto would sing the songs and then Stan Getz would play the melodies, but just sort of totally improvise on the melodies. I feel like that record kind of like influenced how I think about phrasing in a really huge way. And then people Paul Simon's phrasing is so epic. Joni Mitchell's phrasing, learning Coyote. I learned the Joni Mitchell song Coyote for a Live from Here in late 2019. And just kind of, internalizing that phrasing, I feel like, and then learning the song and then being able to sort of put my own spin on it was a really cool exercise. But yeah, I don't like being locked into a melody. I mean, like I love melodies and I love writing melodies and I love learning melodies. But then when I'm performing, I love to use the melody as a jumping off point it's just like as another way of expressing what I'm feeling at the moment.
It's like so memorable and so enjoyable as a listener.
Gosh, thank you.
Keep on being weird, Aoife. Your first experience of an all-female outfit, at least I think, I could be wrong, was the mid-2000s with Sometimes Why, Kristen Andreasen and Ruth Miranda and yourself. And you've gone on to play with I'm With Her, with Sarah Watkins and Jaros. Can you talk about the differences you have experienced playing with all-male ensembles and then with all-women bands, and what has been your experience with like finding other women to jam with when you were starting out and what those relationships have meant for your musicality?
Yeah, I mean, like this is an interesting topic because I don't know. I mean, I'm a musician and I don't like my experience has thankfully I think been very different than many other women's experience in the music industry, feeling like there weren't enough women or they didn't feel supported or it was a man's world. And yes, it certainly is a man's world, but I've never felt that from the other musicians. I felt that more from promoters or from, just like from people outside of the actual musical sphere of things. Like when I
was the connectors.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The people who were kind of the gatekeepers or who were going to hire you for a gig or put together a set at a festival. But I came up also at a time where there were a lot of women playing music. The Mammals were playing. The original Mammals had 2 women. The Ducks had 2 women. Uncle Earl was all women. Like there were just so many bands coming up right when Crooked Still was coming up that they're like, it just felt like there were just tons of women around. The Biscuit Burners, like this old band from North Carolina with Shannon Whitworth and Mary Lucy. It was like 2 girls and 2 guys. It just didn't like, it wasn't like a conscious thing that I literally ever thought about. My first professional gig was with the Wayfaring Strangers, and there were three women singers and male instrumentalists, and I don't see that as, I've seen people say like, well, if the only woman in the band is the singer, then that's bad, and I'm just like, I just don't. That's like not how I feel. I feel like people, there should be more women playing music, but it's like, I don't know. I'm not here to tear down the bands that have a female singer in them. There's a great tradition of that in Irish music, like Sullis, Danu. There's so many great, and I feel like a singer is a musician, and you shouldn't be thought less of because you were an excellent singer and you don't have instrumental chops necessarily. And I don't subscribe to that.
This question kind of ties into that. So you're a mid-career artist, and something cool that's happened recently is that Issa Burke of Lula Wiles joined your band as guitarist, and she's someone who has looked up to you and has been mentored by you for years. So it's kind of like come full circle. How do you feel about your role as like the adult in your scene now?
I love that there are all these young musicians that I've known for so many years and played with, and I really respect them as musicians. And I don't know, it's funny, I was actually talking to Issa about this recently, and about how I've known Issa. I first played music with Issa's dad when I was 18 at my freshman year of college.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, there was this accordion player named Jeremiah McLean, who's a Vermont musician, and his recital, he was like he was getting his master's or something at the school, and he did a recital, and David Surratt played, and I played, and I was 18, and David Surratt was, I don't know, I guess probably like 30 or 5 or something. He's also quite young. I feel like he's in his 50s. Issa's dad. And I met Issa. She was obviously like a real child at that point. She was probably like 8 or 9. I didn't meet her then. I met her for the first time maybe when she was like a young teenager. And she sang with me on stage at Henry Fest in 2008, which was so sweet. But I've just sort of watched her kind of come up and really been impressed with all of the music that she's made. She's such a great musician, and it was a real natural choice for somebody to play guitar and sing. I really wanted a female backup vocalist for this record because there's a lot of female vocals on it, and a guitar player and somebody who
you get more bang for your buck.
Exactly. So I'm really excited to like actually go on tour because we've only done 4 shows so far. So.
Including Fresh Grass, which I saw.
Fresh Grass, exactly.
It was very exciting to
Actually,
see.
only 3
shows,
yeah.
Oh, okay. It just feels like really, really big, like really cool that Issa's in your band now. How has it been for you to bring like a female lead guitarist on the road with you? You've only done 3 shows, but like to lift someone up that you mentored who's also a young woman coming up behind you.
I think it feels great. When we really just did the 3 shows, you'd have to ask me like after we actually go on tour.
Okay.
But again, I feel like this kind of ties back into the previous comment, which is like, I don't want to be like, it's all about the music, man. But like, for me, it kind of is. It's like, I'm less thinking about like the big picture. This is for better or for worse, but for me as a musician, like I'm not up on stage thinking about how like, I don't know. I'm not thinking about like the fact that like it's cool. It's like a fleeting thought and it's incredible, but it's like, that's not what I'm focused on. I'm focused on like making music and making great music with Issa and Ethan and Robin. Like, and I don't want it to be like a performative thing. It's like, it has to like, to me, like, and this is with all of this stuff. And I feel like I've talked about this a lot with her is like, there's no point to do something because it's all women or all this or all that. Like, I don't think that there's a place for that in music. I feel like in music and art in general, like the art is the most important thing. And the things that can support the art are crucial, but for me, they're not the art is the most important thing.
I hope that at some point you do get a chance to like step back and realize like how fucking awesome having Issa in your band is, because like what you're saying I totally agree with, but like this is a patriarchal society that we live in. There's a lot of fucking boundaries that we have to break through in order to put women and put Black people and put queer people on stage, and I like commend you for doing that. It's cool.
Thank you. No, I mean, I'm really excited about it, and I feel like, but I just don't want anybody to think that I hired Issa for my band because of, you know what I mean? It's like, that's the thing of like,
right.
Like, oh, like she was
Well, that sounds like the patriarchy.
Yeah. Well, not really. It sounds like the virtue signaling that's all over the internet. Like, I feel like that's like,
okay.
I feel like actually that's less of the patriarchy and more like whatever. It's more just,
yeah.
I feel like there are people who are, that's how they think and that's how they want. It's like they do something because they want to be perceived as doing it a certain way and they want to be patted on the shoulder for it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, totally. That's a good point.
That's the reaction to the patriarchy, which is like it's just, we're living in the age of reactionary everything, right? It's like everything is just these extreme reactions. And I think we're seeing that so much in the pandemic with the politicization of everything. It's just so reactionary.
Okay, let's talk about this record, Age of Apathy. You were working with Joe Henry during the pandemic remotely. How did that logistically work? Like, you were in the studio in Florida, and was he like zooming in and listening to all the sessions?
He zoomed in a couple times. How it worked was I contacted him in early January of last year, and I said, I'm starting to work on this record. I've recorded a couple songs, like two. No, I think I'd only recorded one song at that point. Like, I made a demo of something. And I said, I'm starting this record. I think I'm gonna finish it here. At this point, it was like clear that the pandemic was not over. Like last January, I think it was just so hard to know how long we were gonna be not touring and not doing stuff. I reached out to him and I asked if he wanted to hear some of these demos I was working on and if he was interested in producing a record virtually. Basically, I would send him stuff. He could zoom in, give me feedback, yada yada. And we're good friends. We had never worked together before in this way, or really in any way. We had done a couple of shows together, and that's it. And he was really keen on the idea, and I sent him a couple of these first demos, and he was really excited. And then kind of once that was in place, everything just kind of started to flow out of me. Like, I was just writing so much, and
that was cool.
It was really cool. It was bizarre. I really have never had an experience like that before. I wrote a lot of music in this exact little room that I'm in right now.
Cute.
But I would be in here writing during the day or writing at night, and then I would go to the studio, a couple, maybe 3 or 4 days a week and spend the mornings there. And then I would leave at, 2:15 and pick up my kid at school. And it was great. So I was making these demos of guitar, piano, electric guitar, vocals, and I thought they were demos. I would send them to Joe and with the copy of the lyrics, and then sometimes I would make some edits and go in and fix them the next day. And as he was kind of listening to them, I was imagining we were going to start from scratch and recut everything, once we were sort of had everything done. Mm-hmm. But after I had 13 or 14 songs, he was like, I think that we should use those demo tracks as the basic tracks for the record. Those should be the bones of the record. And I went and redid vocals, and I fixed some stuff and kind of made final vocals of stuff, but we sent them out first to the drummer and then to the bass player, and then kind of started layering all this stuff over. And Joe had all these ideas and people and colors that he thought would work, and it was a really cool process. And it took a long time, but it was a really cool process.
So I read that you found the remote element of the process very freeing, having distance. Somebody wrote remote collaborations, particularly with bassist David Pilch and drummer Jay Bellerose, introduce unexpected rhythms and textures into the architecture of the songs, allowing you to bend your sound into more expansive shapes. Can you expand on what that means a little bit?
Yeah, I think what that means is that usually when you make a record, you make the tracks and then you have an idea of what the drum part's going to be, and you do it with a drummer, or you get the song together and you're playing it and you're oh, can you try actually halftime in this chorus, or how about more cymbals in this part? I feel like usually the person who's the songwriter will have more input into what the drum part for a song is going to be, or a bass part for that matter. But the cool thing about Joe hiring first Jay and then David Pilch was that we would send them the songs and they would send Joe some ideas. I was just kind of always surprised when I got the stuff back. It was oh, that's how they heard it. And sometimes it would take me a second to be that's totally not how I imagined it. But then every single time I was like, but this is fucking awesome. like it was totally not what I necessarily had heard in my head, but like these parts were just, it was like, that's how the song always was going to go. I just didn't know it, especially with the bass parts. Cause I feel like I didn't tour with bass on my last record. I had bass on the record, but I didn't tour with the bass player. And I've always sort of had this idea that like bass, I don't know, sometimes like bass lines just really like square and make the song feel really heavy and like they weigh it down. David Pilch is like just the opposite kind of bass player. He was sending back these super melodic, like bizarre bass lines that like every time I would hear a track from him, I'd be like, that's so weird. I'm really not sure that was the right approach. But then I would listen to it like twice, and then I would be like, oh, he was inside of my head. He must have been inside of my head when I wrote the song, and that's the bass line of the song. There's no way.
My God.
Yeah, like really, really wild, just way of going about it. So I love so much. And I remember like getting an email from Jay halfway through being like, I'm having so much fun working on this stuff. And I was texting with David Pilch. I've still never met David Pilch. I've met Jay Bellerose and worked with him, but I can't wait to meet those guys and like play with them, because I feel like it just was so musical in a way that I have never made music before. It's like, it was so collaborative, but in this way that was really a different type of collaboration than I'd ever done before.
I went to Over the Rhines Festival, Nowhere Else Fest, in September, and Jay Bellerose was there with Joe Henry.
Yeah, they're like best friends.
I was with Peter Mulvey was also playing, and I was talking to Peter. I'm like, Jay Bellerose is the most famous person here, and I like walked by him, like looking at him, but I was like, wait, like I was like, I can't go up to him because I don't have anything to say to him other than like, you're the most famous person here. Bye.
That would have been a good one-liner, I feel like.
Okay, maybe I'll save it for next time.
Save it for next time.
But yeah, his drumming is just exquisite, and
He's so good.
Adds such layers and depth to the songs on the new album. So like the theme of Age of Apathy in your kind of press release bio about the album, one of the first lines is, as tragedy after tragedy threatens to render us numb to the human cost of it all, Age of Apathy finds O'Donovan endeavoring to carve out a joyous and purposeful existence. Yeah. What's been your experience with numbing and apathy, and how do you combat it? When do you think maybe it's okay?
I think that this is something that I feel like I'm still, like it really is tragedy after tragedy. And also just like thing after thing, even like this week with Facebook and the metaverse and just all of this stuff. And when I think back on, this is also in the press release, but when I started to see the similarity between 9/11, 2001, and then like this kind of full 20-year cycle with right now, and how like just how those 2 decades have sort of shaped, well, just how like what my experience was in those 2 decades. And I wonder if you feel the exact same way, because I literally feel like September 11th was like day one of being an adult for me. Like just like that was it. We were sophomores in college, and it was like, it just was, childhood was over. Like the world would never be the same again. And I remember being so scared that the world would never be the same again. Like that was the sort of the thing that kept on scaring me, was like, nothing's ever going to be the same. And just this sort of wanting things to be the same and I feel like the change that's ensued over the last 20 years and like how the world has evolved. And of course, every generation kind of goes through their own version of this. But I feel like for our generation, the millennial, these like us older millennials, and I feel like it just feels like so immense. And I think that a lot of that kind of has to do with like coming of age in this sort of digital era, and kind of like really remembering a time where like things were just very different, like in our early years of our adulthood, as opposed to like the late years of our adulthood, and or as we enter middle age, right? Like it's just like that's just it. Those between 20 and 40, it's like that was 9/11 to the fucking pandemic. And I feel like that's just kind of like what this record is basically about. It's sort of about like the emotional sort of cycle of coming to terms with all that, like the roller coaster of that, and like losing inspiration, finding inspiration, losing love, finding love, letting go of stuff, and like opening up to whatever is next, I think is kind of how I would put it.
Yeah, like letting go your expectations of what you think life is going to be
Exactly.
like.
But that could also be a metaphor for letting go of an old relationship or letting go of like a previous way of doing things or whatever it is. It just is a lot of that for me.
Letting go how you make money as a musician. Every
Yeah.
3 years, it's different.
Exactly,
Especially,
exactly.
I would say, in these last 20 years.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Exactly. And just, I don't know. So I feel like when I was writing these songs and like recording them and now like talking about them, it's almost like there's more overlap than I even thought. Like, I mean, like I knew I was kind of writing on a loose theme, but I feel like how it kind of coalesced in the end to make the whole record with like Sister Starling starting it and then Passengers ending it and just sort of like really sort of seeing, I mean, similarly to like how my last record ended with Jupiter, with sort of thinking of that as like a jumping off point for like the sort of post-apocalyptic landscape. I don't know if you've heard my last record, but like that last song is kind of like this moment that I feel like that to me is almost like it's like the prequel to this record.
Yeah, that's cool. It's interesting to think about, like, the more you will talk about this album and the more you'll talk about these songs in these types of interviews, the more you'll learn about them. Is that
For sure. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
100%. And even just thinking about it, like just sending the lyrics around and like looking through the lyrics and being like, oh wow, like there are so many connections between these lyrics that I think were just sort of accidental almost.
I did want to ask you about the song Town of Mercy. That's a poem that Joe Henry sent you, which you like effortlessly put music to, and it sounds like kind of a cosmic experience. And and also like during this interview, it's occurred to me that like maybe you don't like really love digging into like cosmic and supernatural experiences. But
Is it because you said, how does it make you feel? And I was like, what?
yeah, you're like, shut up. Listen to the album and leave me alone.
No. Joe, that actually was pretty cosmic because he sent me that song. I mean, it wasn't really even like a poem. I feel like he as a songwriter, he like thinks of it as a song without music yet, the words to a song. And he sent it to me, and I just remember like taking out my guitar. It was actually late at night and it was winter, and of course I'm in Florida, so it's like not really winter here, but it's still, when we in Florida get like below 80 degrees, it's everybody's wearing North Faces and hats. And like this morning, I mean, like I'm really not joking. Like it's 74 degrees right now, and I was just on a run, and like people are literally out for walks with like jackets and hats on in the 70s. So in February, when Joe Henry sent me this music, I mean, like you can imagine, it was like people in ski parkas in 71 degree weather in here. And so me kind of trying to like access the New England kind of vibes. He was writing in Maine, and he said he wrote this song like before the sun came up, and just sort of having this really vivid picture in my head. It's almost like when I read those words of Town of Mercy, I think it's like it reminds me of like a David Lynch movie or something. It just feels like it's like a TV show. It's a novel. It's like it's a whole story. Like everything is there. And I kind of messed around on the guitar, and when I went into the studio in the morning, I just sat at the piano and like really just did 2 takes like of piano and vocal, and I was like, I feel like this is done. And then I put that like
That's
weird,
unusual.
It's very, very unusual. Like we might have then like gone back and like edited one word or something. But it was really cool. And then I sent that to him, and I'm like, I have no idea if this is the vibe you wanted or not. But he was, I don't even know how I found those chords. That was what was just so weird about it, was because every time I've like played it live, I've never played it in the show yet, not yet. But I did it at AMAs in the piano, and just even like trying to like find where those chords are on the guitar or on the piano. I'm like, wait, how did I come up with those? I don't even know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, Orlando, you moved there last fall. Your husband is the artistic director and conductor for a few symphonies there.
Just one. Just one.
Okay. How do you like it, and what do you want people to know about Orlando and why it's a cool place? Well,
so he's had this job here since 2015, and when that started, I've sort of been like the unofficial ambassador for Orlando is a very cool place, but that's definitely gone up since we've been down here full time for the last year. It's just incredible. I mean, I don't want the secret to get out, because what's so cool about it is that it's just like one of these very progressive, hip, small cities, the way that Nashville or Austin or, it's just a really cool city. Like I live in a 100-year-old house on a brick-lined street, and I can walk everywhere, and there's incredible hipster coffee shop right around the corner, and all these great restaurants and so much great culture. I saw an amazing repertory theater production of Frog and Toad the musical last weekend. Then later that night, I saw Eric conduct the Dvorak New World Symphony with the orchestra. Like, there's a lot going on here. There's a beautiful art museum. There's a great kids science center. It's called the Orlando Science Center. There's just like high quality stuff here and really cool, like-minded people. It's sort of like a little blue dot in the middle of Florida. And also the main thing I feel like people don't know about Florida is how much nature there is in Florida. People think that Florida is just strip malls. And it's fine if you don't want to believe it, but Florida is like full of insane parks, kayaking, running, like just gorgeous trails and just the outdoors. It's like, it's Florida. The funny thing about Florida is everybody loves to hate Florida. And of course we have a big buffoon in charge here. But that buffoon is at odds with a lot of the local leaders. The local leaders in Orange County are incredible. Jerry Demings is the mayor of the county. He's the husband of Val Demings, who is one of Biden's frontrunners for VP. The mayor of Orlando, Mayor Buddy Dyer, is just a great music fan, music lover, comes to my shows. Like, it's just
so
very
cool.
It's just very cool. It's a really cool place.
Nice. And do you think you'll be down there for a while?
Well, it's hard to say. We still have our deep ties in New York City, of course, in Brooklyn, and Eric has a new job in Norfolk, Virginia as well. So we're sort of, it's all up in the air right now, but we're really loving being here right now. And my kid goes to an amazing Montessori school, and it's just like I said, everything's outside. We go swimming, go kayaking, go running. It's great.
All right, I'll be right there.
Yeah.
Let's do the lightning round before you go. Just
Great.
A bunch of fun questions. You ready to do it?
Ready.
Here we go. What is the first song you learned on the guitar?
The first song I learned on the guitar is probably Dimming of the Day by Richard and Linda Thompson.
Oh, that's a good one. What is your karaoke song?
I'm so bad at karaoke. One time I did I Don't Know Why by Norah Jones in a bar in Biarritz in France, and my cousin laughed so hard she peed her pants.
Oh my God. That's hilarious. Dogs or cats or something else?
Dogs, I guess. I'm not a pet person.
What is your coffee order?
Black coffee.
First celebrity crush?
Gilbert from Anne of Green Gables. Gilbert Blythe. I mean, really, that's like the first thing that pops into my mind.
That's great. Who is the nicest musician you've ever met?
I don't know. My parents?
That counts. First album you bought with your own money?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of what it would have been. I don't remember exactly. I remember like going to HMV, but I remember getting like a cassette tape of like Casey and JoJo. Do you remember that duo? They were like an R&B duo.
Kind of, yeah.
I'll look it up.
I bet if I knew their
It might have not been the first, but it was around then.
Oh wow. Okay, this is the last question. Where's the most beautiful place you've ever visited?
The most beautiful place I've ever visited. So many places. Maybe New Zealand.
Nice. Aoife, thank you so much for talking today. This has been so good.
Thank you, Cindy. I feel like we could just keep talking for another hour.
I know, for real. Congratulations on the new album. It's really beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Today's episode of Basic Folk was produced by John Nungesser, our music composed by Alex Stanton. You can find all of the episodes of Basic Folk wherever you found this podcast or at our website, basicfolk.com. That's also where you can support us and gain access to Backstage, which is members-only exclusive content. Check out the website, follow us on social media, keep on listening, and keep on shining. Okay, thanks so much. Bye.